But practically, going back to where do I start with this? Lifecycle carbon analysis is a process that can be followed. There's an ISO standard that you can accredit to in terms of saying, here's my product, how do I figure out the life cycle carbon impact of that? So LCA is what it's referred to in the field.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can even go one step before that. If you dive into the technical guidance for Scope 3, you can dive in at categories 10 through 12, which is about post-processing, use, and end of life of the product. And in category 11 on the use, you'll find the classic example where it's like a washing machine that is built. And actually the guidance isn't bad, right? And it sort of says our product is rated at this power. We think it will be used 3 times a week in an average household over 5 years. And you can make a pretty good go at looking what that's like. What I think that the more interesting bit that comes out of it is, by just doing that, you can get a great understanding of, is that 90% of our emissions of the product life cycle? Yeah. Is it 50? Is it 10? Yeah. From there, and compare it back to maybe scope 1 and 2. I think it's good the first big win is to have a perspective of, how much is the use of product as a percentage of, of the overall life cycle. Yeah. You look at gas turbines in aircraft, they are over 95% of the emissions is because the thing's up in the air for 25 years, Yeah. So, yeah.
Because that's the thing. It links back to the initial footprint in the first place. It's once you've got a rough idea of what it looks like, the question then is, and then what? If I take experience from Unipart, we're on a journey of understanding the life cycle carbon impact for all of the products that we manufacture and design, and that's a journey, and we've got that for a large number of our products, but then it's, and then what? So you understand sort of the heat maps of where your hotspots are to your aeroplane example. Have either of you got examples of where you've taken a product, you understand the carbon impact of it, and then this has been tweaked or this has been tweaked and it's created an improvement?
I have. Sensitivity analysis is a technique in LCA where you tweak parameters that are the most emitting, and it gives you new scenarios. It's meant to be done with the largest emitting material or energy, whichever drops out, really. You're meant to tweak the highest emitting factor. The only ones that I've done is tweaked is in the processes and the use of energy and things like that, which drops back a bit to that scope 1, 2 thing of that's what we can affect at the minute. We've discussed this a lot around design change and some of the more complex vertical supply chains. I don't think yet we've really got nailed the feedback mechanism into the design process, really, not to a huge degree. That's my general thoughts.
I just want to answer that question completely differently, sort of thing.
Good.
I think where it comes to what can companies do, particularly around life cycle assessments, what we've been able to do is create a tool that makes the information available to businesses that need to make a difference really easy and quick. And I come back to the point that we said earlier on around continuous improvement. I think the whole topic sometimes can be a little bit overcomplicated. And actually, what people can do with a life cycle assessment is to understand the resource and material impact that they've created by putting this product together or a service. And by seeing the output of that process, whether it be a highly emitting process step or some material that is sourced from far away that could be reconsidered, then they can make some really practical steps around just changing 1 or 2 things. And, sometimes, in the last few years, we've talked about topics like the aggregation of marginal gains, which essentially means make lots of small changes and you make a big difference. Well, actually, businesses that have got the ability of changing small parts of their process can, make a big difference. Yeah. And I think that what we're trying to do in the supply chain is to be able to show businesses in a really practical way where they can make some difference, potentially without them really understanding some of the really complex elements of greenhouse gas emissions and the policies that sit behind it, but just to know to focus on this thing, you will make a difference. If you start with understand it, measure it, do something about it in terms of improvement, then I think most people in businesses will understand that. By bringing into effect things like the lifecycle assessment that we've been working on, Roger, then that just helps organisations understand more, right? And you can start to make better decisions about the changes that you need to make.
You're absolutely right. I think the reason that we've not answered the reduction element bit yet is that if we follow the path that we're taking on as a joint offering, when we talk about the complexity of scope 3 and getting data from that, actually one of the biggest entry routes to that is to trace your product through the supply chain. And I think that is quite a welcome relief to a lot of business leaders or production leaders, because that's what they understand. They don't want to have to go and read about all the 15 categories and try and figure it out. What they do know is their process flow and their value stream to actually get it there. And all we do is tag environmental impact onto that. The thing that's held it back, though, has been that lifecycle assessment, it's a wonderful tool, but it is in its traditional form very time consuming and does require quite high level expertise. The solution that we've provided, that we're working on with Chris, we use new technology, AI, to massively reduce the time on that. And, we're talking very significantly down to minutes or hours of doing that. Traditionally, it's a 5 to 10 day process. And at the minute, as we're doing this, we're in the phase of trying to scale that reporting. But what we're trying to do is reduce down the intensity of that reporting so that people are spending more time and effort on the reduction thing afterwards once they've got their hotspotting. I think that the brutal reality of life cycle assessment is that I think a lot of people are quite exhausted in the manual terms after they've done one. So they've spent like 90% of their energy to do it. So, by bringing that down and looking at the volume scale of what we want to do LCA at, we're aiming to build more of that evidence base around all those products, but also we've not crushed their will on the way. They've got their information quickly. Let's use that extra time and budget to make improvements on it, really.
And where we've